So I said, I got to get to church on Sunday sometime. I said, I got to get there because I want to hear what Father had to say. And then I receive my communion, and then if I want, I can go ahead on. But you're supposed to get your communion and stop and say a quick prayer. You're supposed to say a prayer and then walk on out the door.
Oh, okay.
You know, if you want to go ahead and leave, but you're supposed to do a prayer after you get your communion.
All right. I'm recording this.
You can think about Jesus and read about Jesus and pray to Jesus, and I don't think.
And that other one was nice too.
That I've ever prayed to the sleeping Jesus. But he didn't sleep. But I don't think there's anywhere else in the Gospels that says that Jesus was sleeping except here in today's Gospel. He was asleep. Kind of surprising that he was asleep. We always think of Jesus moving, active, very active. Going here, traveling, and getting in boats and going places and standing on hilltops and preaching to people and going down the road and meeting someone who was sick and healing them and going to the tomb of Lazarus and bringing him back from the dead. It's all action. If you ever knew of an action person, it's Jesus. So today it's kind of surprising. When it says that he was tired. Usually that's why you sleep. He'd been working all day. And he wanted to cross the Sea of Galilee. He wanted to go across the lake, which is maybe 3 or 5 or 7 miles across. And so he told his disciples, bring the boat and let us cross over to the other side. And so it says that he left the crowd. He left the crowd that he was teaching and preaching with and being with. And it says they took him with them in the boat just as he was. Now, you know, that's the way we come to church. I mean, you could be dressed all different kinds of ways. But you come just as the person you are. Now, you may fool some of us, but you don't fool yourself. We come with our successes, we come with our failures, and we know inside, and we know that God knows this is who I am. We come just as we are. And Jesus came just as he was. He got into the boat just as he was. Had no suitcase. Didn't have a traveling bag. Didn't have a
toothbrush.
He didn't have any toothpaste. Didn't have a toothbrush. Didn't have anything.
I like Father when he do it. He make it seem so, you know, he make it into a real good, real story. Oh, have you talk? Okay, I'm talking.
You know, the people who got in the boat were fishermen.
You want to turn it up?
And they thought they were doing it.
Should be good.
And they wasn't surprised that a storm came up. But this was a violent storm. This is like the perfect storm. The waves were getting higher and higher. And I read somewhere that if the wave gets higher than the length of a boat, it will capsize the boat. And things were getting that desperate. And they panicked. In the back of the boat, on a cushion, Jesus was asleep. The wind howled, and the boat was tossed every which way, and the waves kept pouring water into the boat. But Jesus kept sleeping. I thought, how could he do that? Until I remembered a little thing from my young days. I remember in high school, my older brother and I, whenever we had a chance, we could sleep. We could really sleep. And we were famous for sleeping. And one Saturday morning, we woke up about noon,
And didn't nobody wake him up.
And the neighbors all standing around the house, and people running up and down the steps. And we said, what is going on? There had been a fire in our house.
He was still asleep.
And we had slept through it. And so I can see how perhaps Jesus stayed asleep in this great storm. You know, the reaction of the disciples is no different than ours. I think there's a lot of times when we think, you know, God must be, I don't know where God is. I mean, it seems like Jesus is sleeping. And doesn't really care what's happening in our lives. Does God really care about the terrible things that happen in our communities? Does God really care when I'm sick, or when something's happening and I wish it would come out a different way, and I keep wondering, is this the end? Is everything going wrong in my life? And I wonder if God cares. That's their reaction. They said, Lord, wake up. We're dying here. And don't you care that we are perishing? And he woke up and very calmly said to the wind and the sea. He addressed them as persons, because that's the way God looks at creation. God has a very, very personal relationship with the water, with the wind, with the rain, as God has a very personal relationship with all of us. And so he said to the wind and the sea, quiet. Just as you would say to your children sometime, quiet. Be still. And the sea became calm. The reaction of the disciples was quite startling. They were afraid of the storm. But when Jesus did what he did, they were afraid of him. They were afraid of Jesus. They thought they knew him. They thought they saw him change water into wine, and they saw him feed thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. They saw him heal people who were blind and lame, and they even were there when he raised Lazarus from the dead. But something happened in that storm when they thought they were dying. And they said, who then is this that has power over nature? Who can stop the wind from blowing? Who can calm the sea? They were afraid of him. I want to tell you, there is a sleeping Jesus in all of us. There is a Jesus deep within us that seems to be resting at times. But that Jesus is there. That Jesus is sleeping and ready to be awakened at any time. There's a sleeping Jesus. There's a powerful Jesus within us. And I think some people realize that and have a reaction that, I hope he stays sleeping. Because sometimes, we don't want to get too close to Jesus, just like the disciples. Sometimes we're afraid of Jesus. We're really afraid of God. Because if he could still the sea and the winds and the rain, if he could do all these things, what is he going to do to me? If I get too close to this Jesus, if I get to know him too well, he's going to be in my life. change some things. Do you notice how some of us sometimes, and some people for a long time, kind of keep a distance with Jesus? Keep your distance. I'm following you, but I can hardly see you. You're so far ahead.
That's funny.
But we gotta know. We gotta know that there's a sleeping Jesus in us. And we got to know that when we're in trouble, just wake him up. When, you know, there are storms that come into anybody's life. And you know, those of us who've been through some storms, and you don't have to be a certain age. You can be very young, and you can know that there's been trouble in your life. There's something that's not right in your life. And there's some things that you dream about, that things would be better, and things would happen in a better way. You can be very young, just as well as being very old and knowing that there are storms and there's tempests and there's things that happen that stir us up and stir our life up, whether we like it or not. This is a great gospel today. This is a great gospel today. It's not just about Jesus getting in a boat without his toothbrush. It isn't just about Jesus calming a storm. It's about trusting that God is always with us. It's about Jesus always there deep within us. Not on a cushion in the back of a boat, but resting, sleeping, right in our hearts. So you have to do what the disciples did. When you need him, wake him up. Wake him up. Let us stand and pray.
That was nice. I might have to start getting these tapes for myself. Because I really never sat down and listened to